Support for the Dice Tower comes from listeners like you and from the Op, also known as USAopoly. Thanks for your support. The Dice Tower, episode 655.
It's the year 2000!
Or it was 20 years ago.
Welcome to the Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. On today's show, Geoff celebrates the game of life. No, not the one you're thinking of. And we look at questions about our favorite pitch car expansions, the old maid mechanism, and a possible connection between our musical tastes and board gaming. Then we revisit the turn of the century with our top 10 games from the year 2000. I'm Eric Summerer. And joining me now, the Y to my K, Tom Vassell.
Okay, I will accept that one, because that's clever.
All right.
It is interesting.
He called it clever.
If you look back at the panic for Y2K, and now we look at it and we go, those poor, deluded fools. They thought that was bad.
Yes. I would trade the Y2K scare for pretty much anything right now. Yes, I mean,
yeah.
For those of you who are too young to know, there was this weird computer thing in 2000 where everybody thought that the date changing was going to throw these computers off and possibly shut down the power grid and all sorts of wackiness. It wasn't nearly that bad.
Now, part of it was because they figured it out a couple years ahead of time. And they worked really hard to fix the problem.
There was hard work.
But they were talking about how whole power grids would fall down. People's pacemakers would stop working.
Oh, yeah.
And what always fascinated me about the whole situation was it was like 11:30 in Florida. I was in Florida at the time. And people were panicking. And I said, we lived in the Panhandle, so we were in Central Time Zone. I'm like, it already happened.
Right.
New York didn't collapse.
Yes.
Come on now. Why do you think it will be different here?
I mean, as soon as Australia switched over, I think we knew it was going to be okay.
Right. But yeah, well, but this they knew it was coming and they prepared. So
yes,
anyhow, so once again, folks, you're listening to us. I'm curious. I love that we don't technically get a ton of feedback on the podcast.
No.
So hey, if you like the podcast, just maybe do a quick shout out in the Facebook or in the Board Game Geek forums, because sometimes we wonder if we're talking to empty air. We may have to run a contest or something on here, or do some feedback, or shake things up somehow.
I'd love to win something.
I'm gonna go to a solo podcast, just me.
Wait, what?
And have you ever thought about the number of times you've said, "Wait, what?" on this show?
No, but now I'm going to think about it.
I believe a whole montage could be made of that.
So, I mean, someone would have to edit it and put that all together.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, anyhow, so welcome here, folks. This is not the only thing we do. If you only listen to the podcast, we are also on the YouTubes. We have a channel there, and you can check it out. And every night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, somebody's talking to you from the Dice Tower.
Yep.
It might be me, it might be Eric, it might be Z or Roy, and we've had so many different guests and different people show up. It is fun and it is positive. It is hopefully a break from what you see on the news. So we welcome you to that. We're also reviewing a pile of games.
Ooh.
And in that vein, let's get started with a game that I've been waiting for Eric to finish, even though I just finished it Saturday, so I can't really say anything.
Yeah, you were yelling at me on Twitter to finish this game, and I had already finished it.
I did not yet. Well, then, good job.
There were 3 exclamation points. So a couple of episodes ago, I talked about playing the previous Unlock set, the Heroic Adventures, and Tom's like, well, I got the new one. I'm like, well, I haven't played the new one yet. The new set is called Timeless Adventures, and as we mentioned before, the Unlock folks have started putting 3 adventures in a box, which I think is much better. It's much nicer to have 3 adventures in one box, and it's easier to carry them around. You don't have all these tiny boxes to keep track of. But anyway, there are 3 new adventures in this latest set. There is an extension of the No Side saga. This is the same evil mastermind that has shown up in Squeak and Sausage and a No Side story, sort of an animated villain.
And you do not need to have played or know anything about those to this one.
No.
It's just a bad guy taking over a circus.
That's about it.
You just got to stop him.
Yes. Bad guy in a circus. And then there's another one that is based on some sort of French property that I was not aware of. Arsène Lupin.
It's like, well, the Lupin guy's a famous detective.
Yeah.
Like almost their Sherlock Holmes.
Okay.
You're like a ragtag group of urchins in this one
Orphans,
trying
yeah.
to solve a mystery.
Yep.
But he's kind of there in the background going, good job. He's actually way nicer than Sherlock Holmes and the consulting detective is.
Sure.
I just want to point that out.
Yeah. He sort of sends you on a quest to find a diamond. And then the last one is called Lost in the Time Warp. It's a time travel adventure. All three of these I really enjoyed. There were a couple of annoying parts on a couple of the puzzles. One of the puzzles in the circus adventure involves a physical challenge where you had to.
I saw your tweet.
Yes, you had to build something out of the cards. I'm not going to spoil exactly what it was, but you had to build something using the cards. And my table is very slick. And the cards did not want to stay in the way that they were supposed to stay. But without getting the cards into the position they wanted you to get them into, you couldn't solve the puzzle. And so I
just had my kids do it.
I needed extra hands. My children were watching me do this, and they didn't offer to help. They weren't laughing. Maybe they were laughing on the inside. But they were just watching me like, Dad, what are you trying to do? I'm like, I'm trying to build this thing. And then after like my fourth attempt, they're like, that's not working. Thanks.
I'll say this about these. They are ranked in order, 1-star, 2-star, 3-star difficulty.
Yes.
But I would argue I felt like they were all the same difficulty. I didn't think any of them were particularly difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think any of them were particularly easy. I also thought all three were very, very, very full of theme.
Yes.
I thought the theme was really strong in all three of them.
Yep. All three of these have an extra component. Usually the unlock games are just a deck and the app. But each of these has some poster components, large components that get added into the mix where you're laying cards on them.
And I really like those.
Yeah.
Especially in the Lupin one. The poster was used to great advantage there. Oh, actually the circus one too.
Yep.
And all three of them used the app in really unique and cool ways.
Yes.
There's a moment which really I found delightful in the Lupin one, in involving almost a video.
Oh yes.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do indeed. That was lovely
really
puzzle. Yep.
That was really cool. And then in the third, in the time one, I was so entertained by the story itself.
Yes.
It's not that deep of a story, right?
No.
But it's somewhat entertaining. And the solution to the one puzzle, trying to be oblique here, that involves romance.
Yes. Yeah.
Was really clever. And I felt super smart for figuring it out.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, because it's a time travel, the extra component is you have a map or like a view of a living room, and cards will overlay over it as you change the timeline, which is pretty neat. That's very cool.
So my final verdict on this one is I think there's a few. My favorite of all the unlocks are the Pirate one, Alice in Wonderland, and Wizard of Oz.
Okay.
Those are my three favorites. But I think if I was putting them all in order, numbers 4, 5, and 6 would be from this set. So if for set purposes, This is my favorite. I didn't dislike any of them from this set. And I also thought it's extremely family friendly, this set. Really fun. And they're all different too.
Indeed. It's a very strong set. I will remain annoyed at that final puzzle on the circus one. Because I was with it. I was doing just fine until that last puzzle, and then I went overtime trying to make that work. Glue could have worked, but then it wouldn't have been replayable. Still, solid set. I think my favorite is still the Sherlock Holmes from the previous set, but the Lupin one is very, very good in here.
All right, let me jump to another cooperative style game. called Rush MD. This is the sequel to Kitchen Rush, which I taught Eric and his wife 1 year before the cruise.
Yeah.
So Kitchen Rush is a very frenetic game in which you are just trying to get food, go to the store, buy the food, cook the food, prepare the food, put the food on people's plates and serve it to them. It's a strong thematic game, and it involves sand timers. To do anything in this game, you put a sand timer on something. You can then take the action, but you can't use that sand timer to take another action until it runs out of sand.
Right.
So Rush MD is the same thing, but it's in a hospital. And I thought, same thing, but it has a lot of differences to it. You admit patients to the hospital. Some come into the outpatient. That's pretty easy. You just got to get the medicines for them. And you just grab bunches of wooden pieces that are different medicines and give it to them. But one of the pieces in this game, there's little plastic syringes that come with it. Not needles, they're plastic. And you need to fill these. So you have to open them up and drop little discs in them, green and yellow discs for different medicines and red discs for blood. And that's like a fun little dexterity element to the game. And then for patients who are admitted to the hospital, you put them in these cardboard beds. And then when you go take them to different rooms for testing, you just move the whole bed. And you got to figure out what their problem is first before you can give it to them. And so there's like an MRI test. And for that, you just need to put the timer on the corner of the bed and not have it fall off. That's it. It's not that difficult.
Okay.
But it kind of gives you the idea of the MRI test takes some time and you got to stay still. There's other tiny little mini games that you do when you do different tests. Like there's an X-ray one, and on the back of this little deck of cards, there are numbers. And you're looking for a card that doesn't have the number of the bed of that patient. And they're kind of faded out a little bit like an X-ray. So you're like, okay, this is bed B3. Oh, there's a B3 on this card. Okay, bottom of the deck. Oh, there's a B3 on this card too. Oh, this one doesn't have B3. Good, the X-ray worked. And then when you send someone to the operating room, you have to use tweezers to pick up the pieces and put them on because you shouldn't be touching stuff with your hands.
Right.
So there's different organs, and it's pretty clever because like a bone is pretty easy to pick up, but the little hearts they have, which are shaped like actual Valentine's hearts, right?
Okay.
Those things are a pain in the neck to pick up with tweezers because they're all round.
They're slippery and round. Yep.
But it works well because I would assume a heart operation would be more difficult than bone.
All right.
And if you're a bone doctor out there, I apologize. I don't know, but that seems like it's the case. It's not impossible to win this one. I thought it was not as difficult as Rush MD. You can definitely make it harder. I tend to get irritated at cooperative games nowadays that start you on hard.
Okay.
And then be like, but there's an impossible level. Why don't you start me on easy?
Yeah.
And then if I beat it, you can make it harder.
There you go.
That makes me much happier. I like this one better than Kitchen Rush because I thought there was more things going on. I thought the theme was stronger. And the components are actually nicer too. So that's Rush MD. This is from Artipia/Stronghold.
Very cool.
Games.
Next for me is King of Tokyo Dark Edition.
Dark Edition.
Dark. This is sort of an anniversary edition of King of Tokyo with a brand new art design. The cover is just a shadowy shot of one of the monsters grinning at you. They have like a paper thing that you remove after you've removed the shrink wrap, and so there's no text on the front of the cover of this box. It's very dark, very black color scheme, and all of the art has been reimagined in this shadowy style with color highlights. Very distinctive style. And the board looks like that. The cards are all in that design, and the character standees are all in that design. It's very striking. It's very cool. Basically, it is the same game with some upgraded components. The energy tokens look like plastic lightning bolts. There are a few new cards from the original edition of the game. The dice are translucent, sort of a grayish translucent plastic. They look pretty slick. The only mechanical difference is that there is now a track along the side of the board on the Tokyo board. It's the Menace track. And if you get, ordinarily in King of Tokyo, if you get a triple of one of the number results on the dice, you can score points. That's one of the ways to win the game. Now, if you get a triple 1 or a triple 2 result on your dice, not only do you get the points associated with doing that, but you will also get a couple of these menace points. If you get 3 1s, you'll get 2 menace points, and triple 2s will get you 1 menace point. And at the 3, the 6, and the 10 points on this track, you can claim a new ability. And they're preset at the beginning of the game. You know what's out there. You get to sift through the pile and take a number 3 ability when you reach that point, until they're all gone. There's only 4 3s, 4 6s, and 2 of the 10s if you get all the way to the top of the track. And these are pretty slick abilities, and it's sort of a race to get there, because if there's one that you want, you can hurry and maybe get more 1s and 2s on the dice in order to race up this track. Mechanically, that
sounds like you'd be getting a lot of points. It sounds like you'd be getting a lot of points, though, and maybe the game's over before you get these. Is there other ways to move up on the track?
Maybe some of the cards, like the ability cards, the standard ability cards, may move you up this track. But I think it's primarily doing the 1s and 2s, and the 1s and 2s are only earning you 1 and 2 points each. So you're not moving up that fast. And it's a benefit, because usually if you're looking at 3s versus 1s on your die results, you're going to keep the 3s because they're worth more points. Now there's a reason to go for the 1s and 2s because it's moving you up the track. So you're actually scoring fewer points in order to move up this track. It's a neat concept. It is different, but it is not different enough to replace your edition of King of Tokyo if you have it already. If you didn't own King of Tokyo, I would wholeheartedly recommend this edition. It's very well produced. It's got a new insert. It's got some extra tokens to track all of this stuff. It looks gorgeous. It's a lovely edition of King of Tokyo. However, if you already own King of Tokyo, and if you already own the expansions, the power-up expansions, which I do not believe they are releasing for this edition of the game, then I don't know if this is a replacement for it. It's fun. It's still King of Tokyo. Nothing about this new mechanism changes that. But it's not something I would spend. Its list price is $50. I don't know if I would spend it if I already owned King of Tokyo, except I literally did that. So forget that. I did buy the new edition.
Well, let me ask you about this, though. How do you feel about the artwork and the changes there? It's like, again, it's this dark theme. It's not really that dark, but it's like brooding type thing. Would you pick that over the fun, colorful artwork of the original and your kids?
I think I prefer this new dark. It's not dark, scary dark. It's dark color palette.
I know that.
It's really cool. I do really like the look of these monsters. I mean, the Mecha Dragon in dark mode is pretty solid. So yeah, I would go with this art design over the original.
Now, from what I understand, this is a limited edition too. Now, I'm assuming the quote-unquote limited edition here will be available for a while, if only because of the supply chains being disrupted right now.
Right. I think the fact that it's limited only means they did one print run. I don't know what that print run is. That could be tens of thousands. But it just means they will not be reprinting it.
Probably.
They've said they're not.
Yes.
But like, if you were, say, this is a gift for somebody that doesn't already have King of Tokyo, great, go for it.
My next one is ClipCut Parks. Now, I can't remember, Eric, if you've talked about this on the show already.
I don't remember if I did, but I have played it and enjoyed this snip and write, or roll and snip. I don't know, something like that.
Cut and write. Anyhow, so this is a game, just real quick update. If you haven't heard before, you get a sheet of paper that is made up of various squares that match 4 different colors of different terrain for a park. You also have these cards you'll draw from a deck of cards that show you some different park layouts, and you need to put squares on those. You could put squares down one at a time, like very slowly, or you could maybe cut out a perfect shape and put it on top of them. And you do that very simply. Each turn, someone rolls a die, and that shows the number of cuts you can make that turn. Everyone has a pair of scissors that are included with the game. Mm-hmm. So it might say 3 1 cuts. So you can cut on one square on your big sheet of paper with the scissors. So you have to cut different cuts. So I can't cut 3 straight with that, but I can cut 1 and then cut another one, then I cut another one in different directions. It's up to me. Mm-hmm. Then it might say cut a 2 and then cut a 3. It depends what the die roll is. And eventually, as you cut, you're going to drop off pieces of paper off your sheet because you're going to cut different ways and they're going to fall off. And then you put them on these cards. If they don't fit on the card, well, you have to crumble it up, literally, and stick it to the side. And that's mostly as a tiebreaker, which could very well happen in this game. This game has a higher chance of ties than others.
Okay.
And then once you fill a card up completely, you get a new card, and the first person to fill up 5 cards is the winner. There's a few other things. There's certain squares on these cards that must be covered with certain colors, or they must be covered with a certain symbol, or sometimes it will show to put something on these 2 squares, it must be the same piece of paper. Mm-hmm. You can't separate them there. And when you finish a card, they also give you bonuses. They might give you some more cuts. They might give you some tokens that you can use to do various things. All in all, it's a very quick game. We're talking 20 minutes. It comes with the scissors. The scissors are way better quality than I expected scissors in a board game to be.
Yes.
To the point where if you don't like them, you can keep them for like kids stuff. They would be very useful for that.
Sure.
The game comes with 100 sheets. You need 1 sheet per player. So if you play 4-player games, you have 25 games in the box.
Okay.
I did see online you can buy 2 more packs of 100 sheets for $5. That seems very reasonable.
Oh, that's not bad at all.
Oddly enough, the rule book does not tell you that you can do that. I had to go hunt it down myself. But if you're playing 2 players, you got 50 games, so that's pretty good.
Sure.
And if you're a solo gamer, well, you'll have this for a while.
You can hoard your sheets. Sorry, I only play this by myself. These are mine.
That's the almost a Seinfeld thing. I look at you like, are you worth a sheet?
Are you sheet worthy?
No. Are you sheet worthy here? I don't know. And here's the thing, because unlike a roll and write, I laminate all my roll and writes.
Yeah. You can't do that.
But I do. You can't laminate these. You are literally going to cut them up. And I know that bugs people, blah, blah, blah. But I found it to be entertaining and fun. It's a nice side thing. I did not put it in the Dice Tower library.
No.
Mostly because I don't need scissors in the library either. But it would run out in the Dice Tower library. But
that is true.
For a house, it's a clever idea. It's definitely based on the gimmick of cutting with scissors. Mm-hmm. But I was entertained by it. So that's ClipCut Parks.
Yes, I liked it. And there's something about the permanence of actually cutting paper that's a little surprising. Like in most roll and writes, you could erase. You make a mistake, you could erase something. But as soon as you snip something, you can't tape things back together. That's permanent. If you made a mistake and snipped the wrong connection, then sorry, you're stuck with it. It's neat. Next for me, we talked about one set of escape games. This is another puzzle game. Several episodes back, Tom, you and I were talking about hint systems in these escape games, and the publishers of a game called The Curious Elevator of Mr. Hincks. In fact, I have it here. The publisher is called Team Bluefish. They contacted me and said, we think our hint system is pretty solid. Would you like to try out this game? So they sent me a copy of The Curious Elevator of Mr. Hincks. It is another puzzle-style game that uses a website to track you on an adventure as you go from floor to floor, working your way around the floors of this tower. Each floor is sort of a little mini puzzle adventure, and the box for The Curious Elevator of Mr. Hincks has a bunch of stuff in it. It has maybe the widest variety of things that I've seen in an escape game. Most of them are papercraft, but there's posters in here. There are business cards. There's a printout. There's a puzzle crossword book. There's a whole bunch of stuff. A pencil. And first, what you have to do on each floor is figure out which of those materials you need to figure out that particular puzzle. And all of that leads to a code word, which will then lead you to the next level, where you then will have to figure out which materials to use again, solve that puzzle, and it's something like 8 or 10 different levels that you get through. I think it's nine puzzles that you eventually work your way through, and then when you get to the end, you can put your name on a leaderboard that says, I completed the whole thing. I saw Neil Patrick Harris's name on the leaderboard, which is cool.
Well, how do you know it was him?
An imposter of Neil Patrick Harris completed this game.
It could have been,
Very well could have been. Who knows? The hint system that they were so excited about is sort of a tiered thing. It is on a website, so underneath the puzzle that you're working on, it says, here are the hints. You want to look at them, and the first hint is basically telling you what materials you're going to need. Then the next hint sort of guides you. There's maybe 8 hints for any given puzzle floor, which is cool. Instead of just jumping you to the end point of how do you solve this thing, it's sort of giving you leading clues, which is the sort of thing I want in this. So the hint system was very helpful. Usually I only needed a couple. If I was stuck on something, I go, oh yeah, all right, I see what they're trying to do here, and I can move ahead and figure it out. The puzzles were novel. There were some interesting ways to use the components. I felt like I was smart when I'd figure something out. The Curious Elevator of Mr. Hincks is pretty cool. And if you're interested, there's a website, hinkselevator.com, and Hincks is spelled Hinks. As far as I know, they're still doing Kickstarter fulfillment, but they should be selling them soon. So find out how you can get your own if you're interested. The Curious Elevator of Mr. Hincks. I liked it.
Now, just to clarify, did you beat it?
I did. I was the 80th completer, the 80th person to go up.
How long did it take total?
It was more than an hour. I took a couple breaks to do family stuff. So it doesn't have a timer like say Unlock does or Exit does. In fact, they don't even tell you to start a timer. It just go ahead and you work at your own pace and get through the puzzles as you get through them. So it was a couple hours, I think, overall.
All right, cool. How do people get this?
Hinkselevator.com is the website. It's the same website that runs the game, but if you don't have the package, you don't want to try doing the puzzles yet. But it also has a link for purchasing it.
All right. Well, why don't you talk about your next game? Because I want to talk about mine last.
Oh, of course you do. Okay, so last for me, this is real quick. The kids and I have been playing various games in the collection as we're all home. And the one that has come out most recently is Monopoly Gamer Mario Kart Edition. I know I've talked about this briefly on the show before. Monopoly Gamer is a variant of Monopoly that is less about the property trading and more about collecting of coins. You go around the familiar Monopoly-shaped board, but it's shortened. There's only 8 spaces on each side of the Monopoly board, and there are only 2 properties in each color group. And you travel around, you can purchase these properties, but all of the prices are much simplified. It's only like 1 or 2 coins. I think 4 coins is the most expensive property on the board. And they're all themed around tracks from Mario Kart. And you are driving around in a little cart as one of the Mario characters. There are special abilities that get triggered when you hit some of the special spaces on the board. There are thwomps that will stop you and cause you to drop coins. As you fly around the board, you pick up all the coins that you go past. Now, the reason I want to mention it is that this is a very punishing game if you have gotten unlucky enough to not have any money. You start out with a little bit of money, and you purchase properties and all that. And if no one lands on you and you don't have any income, but you get hit with enough shells, blue shells and green shells, and you have 2 children who are always hitting you with the blue shells, then you're dropping all your money. And if you run out of money, you have to start selling all of your properties. And at some point, you have no properties. And anytime you get money, you're not going to have it for very long because someone is going to shoot a shell at you and you have to give all that money to them or drop it on the track. So this can be a very punishing game. And that's where I was when it came out.
However, I really recommend you get this game and use the cars and replace the cars in downforce with them. They are perfect. Size.
We have not yet done that. So which is the orange car in Downforce? So Downforce has an orange. Which character is orange?
I used Donkey Kong.
Donkey Kong is orange. Okay.
Well, brown is close. Brown is close. And I just explained it to everyone at the beginning. It's not that difficult.
Okay. We haven't done that yet. What my son is doing now, there's several expansions that you can get for the system, and he's playing solo and running the characters against each other to see which character's abilities are the best. It's like this scientific thing he's doing. I think Yoshi's going to win because that's a really powerful. He can collect all the coins that are on the board, which is a lot. Anyway, I still enjoy the game, but it is definitely a kid's game that can smack you down hard if you're not. I'd almost rather play regular Monopoly because there's more of a chance that I'm not going to get totally destroyed within the first 10 minutes.
You know, I've never seen someone be so bitter about their children enjoying games.
They're having lots of fun and laughing at me. They're laughing at me.
They're all going to laugh at me.
They're all going to laugh at you.
My last game I'm going to talk about here today is a small game from a new publisher, Plaid Hat Games, called Forgotten Waters.
I mean, they're kind of new, right? They've just returned to the fold.
Right. They, if you haven't heard, Plaid Hat had been bought by, they sold. It wasn't like they didn't know what they were doing, but they sold to Philosophia Games, and then Philosophia was bought by Asmodee. But they have regained their freedom of sorts. Unfortunately, they had to give Asmodee their best games, except for Summoner Wars, which is clearly their best. But like Dead of Winter and Dead of Winter and the storybook games that Jerry Hawthorne had designed. Eric loves them, Mice and Mystics.
Yep.
So Forgotten Waters was touted as another in the Crossroad games. The Crossroad, if you remember, was from Dead of Winter, and it's where you would be doing something in Dead of Winter, and someone else would read you a card and give you an option, and you had to choose which option to take. Mm-hmm. This was made even better when they finally came out with the app for Dead of Winter, and I'm pretty sure Eric read that app.
I did narrate that, yes.
Eric is not involved with Forgotten Waters.
No.
As far as I can tell.
No.
I did stop and look it up because one of the characters, I was like, is that Eric? Because I won't be caught in that trap again.
Nope, I'm not in this one.
Well, so what Forgotten Waters is, it's a cooperative pirate game. And you are playing through one of 5 different missions, but these are not necessarily missions that are specific as in, I don't know how to explain it per se, but it's not like, if I go to this spot, this will happen. Because the boards are a little random with random events that can happen. And various things can happen, and you could play the same mission multiple times trying to solve it in different ways. And it's not even just solving it. There's a lot of various events that will happen and things that you will decide to do. And there's dice rolling. The game comes with 12-sided dice that you will use for a lot of different events. And so you all have your own pirate, and each pirate has a backstory, and you'll pick one of many different pirates with this very interesting backstory. You'll pick a mission, you'll go on this mission, and you'll go on this board and move around the board with your pirate ship, but you're moving through a book. And there are various pages in this book, and you may use the same page because there might be a page for calm seas, a page for stormy seas, a page for what you do when you attack another ship, a page for finding a gigantic monster that's about to eat you alive. There's lots of different pages. And on each page, there's worker placement, and you all place your pirates, and you'll take the action of that spot. And you have to do it in like 20 seconds. Everyone has to quick decide, what are we going to do? You put a timer, you put your people down, and while you're doing this, or after you're done doing it, you then resolve all these actions, and you're trying to make sure there's enough food to feed everybody on the ship, or maybe to let them starve, let morale go down. It's also good for them. You might load the cannons, you might fire the cannons, you might go on different kinds of adventures that are going to happen. And what's happening here is a lot of the different things will have these crossroad things will show up, and you'll make these decisions. And you don't know what the outcome's going to be. You just have to kind of go with it. The outcome is likely to be a bittersweet ending regardless of what you pick. And so you're going through this story, and you're going to all win together or lose. It's about 4 hours long. I shouldn't say that. It's about 2.5 to 4 hours long, but the game also has a very clear breaking point. Like they're like, all right, you finished part 1. You can save your game here,
okay.
Just you can write down what the board looks like, although I don't know why you do that. I just took a picture of the board if I was going to do that. But I was so enthralled, I just kept going. I played this game for like 6-7 hours straight.
Okay.
We played through one whole mission, and I was like, we're playing another one. And when I played, the voice acting was only done for the very first mission. The rest of it, there's stories, and you can read them off the app, but it's very app-driven with the voice acting. The voice acting is amazing. I've never heard a finer group of people. I couldn't even imagine someone being good enough to join their ranks.
Okay.
Let me be clear.
I'm feeling a little attacked here.
No, I'm just kidding. In that regard, but they seriously, it is great voice acting. It really is good. The sound effects are good. Random events will happen. The different characters, each of the missions has a different pirate captain, and they all have their quirks and their things, and you can find out their stories, but you yourself have your own personal story that you're doing as a pirate, and then there's just random event things that will happen. It's very humorous. Think Pirates of the Caribbean style humor. And it is one of my favorite games I've ever played.
Wow.
I really like it. I love the story. It's one cohesive story. Yes, random things happen, but in the framework of a bigger story. You can decide to do various things in it. You don't have to pick the different things that you don't have to do it the same way each time. Sometimes there's another pirate ship fighting you. Sometimes you fight another ship and you can decide to run or just stay there and fight. You can have mutiny on your ship. It is really well done. And yes, you need an app to play this, although it's not an app. It's a web-based app, I guess. So as long as you have a computer hooked up to the internet, and you don't even have to be hooked to the internet, you can download it. And it will still work. But I love it. I'm not giving it a 10 out of 10 because I very rarely do that to any game, even after the first time I play it. But it's 9.5 easy.
Wow. Well, I guess I need to try this one.
You want it?
I do.
Yeah, you got to get this one. This one is just that much fun. Now, some people might not like it because it definitely is very strong in the story, but the worker placement part, it offers some good options, and it doesn't allow anyone to alpha game because we're all just putting our stuff out. You don't have much time to sit there and go, all right, Eric, you should do that, and I'm going to do this. And every page in this book has different options.
Very cool. So is there a progression as you play through? So you do one mission. Is there a persistence that when you do the next mission, you have gained something or you're continuing the overarching story? So
they tell you to do the first mission because it introduces it to you and it kind of gives you the background of the world. Because there is magic in this world and stuff like that. Each of the other missions, as far as I can tell, is a complete separate mission, which I'm cool with. And you have you pick a new pirate that you can go through with. There's I want to say 15 different pirates, and you can go through the same pirate multiple times. I guess it's not a big deal. But when you go through these and you go on these missions, you will start with almost no skills, but you gain skills throughout the mission. At the end of the mission, depending on how many skills you've gained, you have like a bad victory, a good victory, or a great victory, essentially. It's like your own personal thing.
Okay.
So I'm telling you, I want to play it right now, but it was stolen from me.
Oh.
So the stealer knows what they've done. They went to the studio when I wasn't there and stole it.
Wow.
And because of social distancing, I can't get it back.
You can't get it back.
But I will. They will rue the day.
Oh, okay.
But I love this game. If you like story at all, I wholeheartedly recommend it. It's fantastic.
All right. Cool. That's Forgotten Waters.
Forgotten Waters. All right, before we jump here to Geoff, real quick, I want to tell everybody that if you backed our Kickstarter, the backer kit is full swing at this point. You should have filled it out. The faster you fill it out, the better it is for us because we can get to ordering the stuff that we need for it. If you missed our Kickstarter and want to get involved, easy enough. Just go to dicetowerkickstarter.com. And the second wave, or whatever you call it, when people can jump in, that's open. So if you want to get in there, you can do that now also. And once again, we say thank you. But meanwhile, let's get to Geoff.
3, 2, 1, go.
It's time for Game Tech with Geoff Engelstein, where we find out how games really work.
In the 1940s, scientist Stanislaw Ulam started developing models of crystal growth after working on the Manhattan Project during World War II. He invented a discrete model of crystals called a cellular automaton. The idea was that the crystal would be represented by a three-dimensional grid, like a collection of imaginary cubes. And rather than continuously changing over time, like physicists normally look at changes, he broke his model up into discrete time steps, like turns in a game. There are rules about what happens in each cube each turn. Now, while studying the properties of cellular automata, he connected with John von Neumann, a pioneer of computer science. Von Neumann was studying ways to make self-replicating machines, and he realized that a two-dimensional cellular automaton might be able to do that. He ultimately developed a 200,000 cell configuration that could duplicate itself. Now, cellular automata continued to be explored in the 50s and 60s, but they burst onto the scene in 1970 when Martin Gardner published in Scientific American in his mathematical games column the rules to a cellular automata that had just been developed by Princeton mathematician John Conway. Now, because of the way that patterns were created, grew, died, and reproduced, Gardner dubbed it Conway's Game of Life. Now, Conway's life has been an object of research, exploration, and fascination for the 50 years since that moment. Now, the rules are incredibly simple. The game is played on a large grid of squares. Each square can either be alive or dead. If it's alive, you put a circle in it. Each turn, each square looks at the 8 squares surrounding it and decides what to do. Now, if a square is alive and it has 0 or 1 alive neighbors, then it dies from loneliness, I guess. If it has 2 or 3 neighbors, it stays alive. And if it has 4 or more neighbors, it dies from overpopulation. If a cell is empty, it stays empty unless it has exactly 3 live neighbors, in which case it becomes alive. A new cell is born there in essence. That's it. Each turn, apply those rules to every cell, rinse and repeat. So it's not a game in a sense, since you don't have any choices to make. You just follow the rules and see what happens. But it is a game in an exploratory sense, as you can play with different configurations and see what happens. And what happens can be glorious, particularly with the powerful computers we now have to run it. Patterns are born, grow, and then die out, or complex shapes replicate themselves. Certain patterns will travel across the grid. Different colonies can collide, battle, merge, and create entirely new shapes. If you haven't seen them, look for Conway Game of Life videos. There is some amazing work out there. Now, Conway's Game of Life is also a fantastic example of emergent complexity. The rules underlying what happens at each time step are simple to understand. You can easily explain them to a 5-year-old who can do them on a checkerboard. And yet, the implications of those rules have been studied for decades with no end in sight. It has been shown that life is chaotic and computationally irreducible. That means that the shortest way to figure out what's going to happen to a random pattern is simply to run the rules. There is no formula or equation that will let you know in advance what will happen. This is a property that we look for in the best games. I love it when there's a huge gap between just reading the rules and playing the game, when situations arise that you could not have envisioned as the rules intertwine and produce new behavior. The 2,000-year-old game Go is the classic example of this. The rules are also incredibly simple, but the emergent behavior on the game board, which looks shockingly like a cellular automaton, by the way, is impossible to predict just by reading them. Sadly, John Conway passed away on April 11th at the age of 82 from the COVID-19 virus. However, he leaves a tremendous legacy of which his game of life is only a part. He also made great contributions to group theory, numeric analysis, knots, and much more. He invented other math problems disguised as games, including Sprouts and the Angel and Devil game. Sprouts can be played easily with a paper and pencil. I used to play it a lot in junior high and high school after learning of it, and it is a lot of fun. And research into Conway's Game of Life has continued, as I said. A few years ago, it was shown that life is Turing complete. In other words, it can be configured to do anything that a computer can do. It also inspired continuing research into digital physics, which contends that space and time are quantized into chunks, and that the universe can be described by how those chunks interact with neighboring chunks in each quantized time step. Quantum loop gravity is one of the offshoot theories of this idea. If you're not familiar with John Conway and the legacy that he left for us, please check it out. There are many great resources online for trying out the game of life or watching videos exploring this endlessly fascinating world. This is Geoff Engelstein with GameTech.
Support for this episode comes from the Op Games, also known as USAopoly, presenting Harry Potter Death Eaters Rising. He who must not be named has returned. Lord Voldemort and his Death Eaters are a mounting threat to Hogwarts and the wizarding community, compelling everyone to combine their strengths against the dark villains. In Harry Potter Death Eaters Rising, players must summon witches and wizards from Dumbledore's army, the Order of the Phoenix, and Hogwarts to retaliate against evil Death Eaters and protect the wizarding world from the Dark Lord's corruption for good. Harry Potter Death Eaters Rising is for 2 to 4 players ages 11 plus and plays in about 60 minutes. Available now.
Tom.
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 Hi, Tom.
How do you pack your hats for safe travel? If you were stranded on a desert island with one of the aliens from Cosmic Encounter, which one would it be?
Tom, gamers want to know. Is that Eric's real voice?
And now, the Dice Tower will authoritatively, definitely, possibly, maybe, answer your questions.
Tom, which way to the game library?
Jared says, since you played so many games, he was asking about a certain mechanism in the kids' game Old Maid. He uses the mechanism at the core of the game. Don't get stuck with the odd card out or you'll lose. And he can't think of another game that uses this mechanism at all. And he says that, talking to Geoff, he said it's similar to a hot potato mechanism. But a hot potato, in many of these games, you don't know where it is. In Old Maid, you don't know where the hot potato is. Mm-hmm. Or if you get the new Kickstarter that just went up, Bold Maid. I actually forgot Old Maid existed. I hadn't played this I remember as a kid playing it, and I was thinking, man, this game is terrible. I hated getting the Old Maid. I didn't even know what Old Maid was. I just figured it meant old lady.
I swear there's a more recent game that does do this, but I was racking my brain. I couldn't figure it out. But I did think of Pit, the original trading game. If you play the advanced rules that have the Bull and the Bear cards.
That's right. You can't win with
If you've got the bear, you can't win, and it clogs up your hand. You have to try and get rid of it, and it's secret, and then everyone hates you when you trade them 3 cards, and one of them is the bear.
I have to say, I probably wouldn't play without the Bull and the Bear because I find it immensely humorous.
Oh, sure. It's a much better game that way. But that's the only one that came to mind where it's secret. I know Flux has the Creepers, that if you draw one of those, it's something that you can't win when that card is in front of you unless there's a special rule that says that creeper is going to win it for you. But you have to find some way to get rid of that card before you can possibly win the game. But that's public. You know that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's games where you can be eliminated because of whatever, but this doesn't sound like a mechanism I think that really works that well. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's one. I think that I would not want to see a game with this necessarily.
I swear something came across my desk that had a similar mechanism that if you have this card, you can't win. You got to get rid of it somehow. But I can't remember what it was. Kevin is exhibiting old man tendencies when he listens to the radio and doesn't want to hear new music over and over again. Why don't they mix it up more with great songs from a few months or a few years ago, asks Kevin. Then it dawned on me. Just like with board games, my music taste seems to not follow the cult of the new. I'm not keen to see something rise and fall. I just like games and music when I encounter them, and I'm not necessarily looking for new innovations. I think the same thing could be said about my parents. They still listen to ABBA, and they play Mahjong. Coincidence? Maybe, but I'm here to find out, or give some food for thought. I have a feeling that most people who play new games and listen to music will also like to follow new songs and artists, and those who don't fall for the cult of the new and listen to music have a tendency to listen to stuff from the past. People's personalities between board games and music might be the same.
Okay, I'd like to start out with a small rant and then a high disagreement with Kevin.
Okay.
First of all, I'm with Kevin on this music thing. This is mind-boggling to me. I will never understand how radio stations get away with playing the same songs over and over and over again. Even if you like that kind of music, it seems weird to me that people like whatever is currently out to some degree. That's why I'm so glad the internet exists, and I just pick my playlist on Spotify and listen to it. But that being said, highly disagree, Kevin, because I found with music, almost always, not 100%, but almost always you pick the decade of music that you grew up listening to, or maybe give or take a decade before or after, and that's the music you like. That's not always the case, but most people tend to listen to the modern pop music, whatever it is, that my kids listen to and think it's pretty awful. And the music your grandparents listen to is pretty old. And it goes that way. That is not how games work at all. I don't sit there and go, well, games from 10 years ago are just not, what? And these games these kids are playing today, get off my lawn. I don't think that. I mean, I've met people in their 60s and 70s who are like thrilled when a new song comes out. While if you go and see New Directions, I know whatever the bands are of today. I'm not necessarily hip on who they all are.
Yeah.
You don't see a group of grandparents sitting there screaming when the new people come out, but you will see that in a board game more. I don't think it's the same.
Yeah, I think I have to agree with you,
Tom. You can draw
Tom.
some parallels, but not a ton.
Yeah, I mean, there's, but it could also be, it all depends on where music or board games fall in your sphere. If you are passionate about music, and you are constantly wanting to know what new is out there, then yeah, you're going to want to pay attention to the new stuff and know who the new artists are and pay attention to the Grammys.
I get that. I just don't think it correlates with board games.
But isn't that where we are with board games? Like,
I
from
don't
our
think there's a person
perspective-
who listens to a piece of music and goes, I like that song. That's the only song I ever need to listen to now. Why don't we listen to this song 30 times before we go to the next song?
Well, no, I don't think anyone does that. Well, my wife sometimes did that.
Yeah, okay. Again, there's exceptions and examples for everything. But I'm saying as a matter of course, most people who I met from my age who grew up in the 80s and 90s tend to have a nostalgia and liking for the music from the 80s, whether it's good or not. And they tend to disdain the new modern music that is put out by Katy Perry or whoever. Not always, but they tend to go that way, and there is some correlation between you tend to like the stuff from when you grew up. But with games, we tend to like the ones we like. Well, doesn't matter when they came out.
Well, sure, but, there are people that like the games that they grew up with. If you are not a diehard hobbyist, you're more comfortable playing the games that you grew up with and already understand. That's a comfort level. I think there's some correlation. But for us, yes, it doesn't make any sense. I am happy listening to older things and not new music, but I am very interested in all the new games coming out.
Yeah. Again, you can find the correlation. I'm sure this will start a whole thread. Maybe.
Maybe.
All right. Mike says he and his family attended a local con called Rocket City Game Fest. And they played in some games, and his 11-year-old played in a Splendor tournament, and he was in the play to win one. And he said his 4-year-old son had so much fun checking out games from a kid's library. The staff played games with him there, and it was so much fun he wants to go back to the game hotel. That's what he called the convention.
Game hotel. I like it.
And so they're playing lots and lots of different games with this son, and it's just like he's just all about it. And so his questions are in regards to this. Do you have a defining moment when you realize that a family member or close friend had just fallen in love with board games or the hobby? And then he asked, can we do a top 10 about adult games that can be modified to teach rules of games to younger gamers? And maybe I'll do that someday, but I don't care about that sort of thing. There's so many great kids games out there that I don't modify adult games to play with kids.
Yeah. A moment, talking about the conventions that Mike is talking about, when I watched my children teaching other kids the games that I taught them, that's sort of when I knew that it was clicking for them. And then when they start asking, when they play games with each other without me being involved, I'm sometimes annoyed. Like they played through Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle recently, all the way through Game 7, which I didn't play.
You really need to let this go.
I didn't play Game 7 because of spoilers. And then when we got to Game 7, I'm like, okay, I get to play now, right? And they're like, no, you're bad luck. Go away.
Well, yeah, I think part of this is you then.
Fine. It's me. Anyway, that was a defining moment for me. Game 7. I'm grateful.
I'm so very sorry. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I think when I saw Melody playing a heavy Euro game with people, I was like, huh, she surpassed me. Not really for me. I'm just glad to play games with kids. It's just a good time. I don't know that there's a defining moment. I can find them in my own life with my kids. Not particularly.
Moving on to Wilfrenor with a question. Comment first, saying that they love our lists, including the alphabetical list. All right. We got some positive feedback on that one. They find it fascinating, even though they're not entirely sure why. But Wilfrenor is shocked by how little respect games outside the Board Game Geek Top 100 get. BGG currently lists more than 115,000 games. That means that the top 1,000 are in the top 1%. In any field, that is considered the cream of the crop. Even if you only use the 25,000 or so that BGG currently ranks, that means that the top 1,000 are in the top 4%. Still remarkably elite. I don't think I've ever been in the top 4% of anything I've done in my entire life. So, have you ever done a countdown of the best or your favorite games from each 100 over 100? So, like, your favorite from 201 to 300, and your favorite of 301 to 400, etc. And while I'm on the subject, do you ever make a distinction between what you think is the best and what is your favorite? That is, I recognize that there are probably better games than Pandemic, but it is still my favorite. On TV, I realize that Masterpiece Theater is, yes, it's still on, is better than Archer, but I really prefer Archer.
That's funny. I mean, I get the whole Masterpiece Theater better than Archer, but I'll answer the second one. No, there's no distinction. To me, the best games are my favorite.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, best is subjective. There is no objectively best game, in my opinion. But for the other one, yes, I've done such things, and I might, in fact, on the video show right now, I'm doing a news video series called 10,000 and Below, where I'm looking at games on Board Game Geek that are ranked 10,000 or lower, and just looking at ones there that are actually pretty good, or games that are not good, but they're amusing me to look at them there. Yeah, I agree. There's lots of games. I don't get too caught up in where something is on the rank of Board Game Geek. It's fascinating to watch the top 100 and how they change. But, yes, you're right. The top 1,000 games on Board Game Geek, if your game 864, that's pretty cool. Hang on one moment, though.
Yes, it is.
Because, what do you think games... What did I say? 864?
Yeah, what is
it, Eric?
Game 864?
What do you think it is?
I will say The Gates of Loyang.
That sounds like a good guess there. 864. Where is it? You've not played 864, I don't believe.
No, I don't know.
We'll go down to 863. 863 is a card drafting game from Rebel. In which you are building a place you would like to reside in.
Dream Home.
That's correct.
Ah.
And that's a good game, right? And
that
it's
is a good
863.
game.
864 is the Shipwreck Arcana. I've not played this. I don't believe you have either.
No.
I mean, when I look in the 800s, there's all kinds of great games here.
I don't get worked up about the rankings really at all. And I tend to we're going to talk about some old games coming up in just a little bit in the top 10 list. I tend to fondly remember some of these older ones, and the top 100 has a lot more newer games on it. I just don't really look at that as anything that's going to change my opinions on games.
Daniel says, I love board games, but due to personal issues and circumstances, I rarely get to play with other people right now. I like to point out that this email came not this month or the previous month. So this was even before all this happened.
Yikes.
So I'll put this question in perspective. He says he loves when a game has a solo mode. Then I listened to a podcast in Sweden where they discuss that they believe solo modes in games hurts the game and its design. Do you think solo mode is bad for the industry and game designing, or does it benefit the industry, making them easier to learn and reaching out to more people? I know you ain't solo games at heart, but Tom is known to solo play some games, so I thought it might be interesting to hear your thoughts.
I'd be interested to hear
I
what
think
the reasoning is for saying it's bad for the design.
I actually have the reasoning, but I do think it's amusing. If anyone, do I think solo mode is bad for the industry? Not right now.
No. No?
But here's my concern with solo gaming. I think solo gaming is fine, but I think it should make sense. I don't think there are some people who like Kickstarters now sometimes are bullied by backers into putting a solo mode in the game when it sometimes doesn't work. And sometimes the solo mode forces them to add a lot to the price because they have to add another deck of cards and another rule book and, more design. And it just doesn't always work. That's fine. A game doesn't have to be solo, just like a game doesn't have to play 8 players.
Yes.
It's if a game does play solo and you can make a good solo play mode, then hooray. But I think insisting that every game has to have solo, I think is not good for the hobby. However, I think solo modes are fine. I still prefer to play with other people for the most part, but there are times I play solo. In fact, the game I talked about earlier, the Forgotten Waters, is 3 or more players. But you could play it with 1 or 2. In fact, there's rules online, and I thought, I could play this with 1. It seems like it would be pretty easy.
Okay.
So that is... What about you, Eric?
I mean,
solo.
I don't think they're hurting the industry. I agree. Like, if the designers are putting a solo mode in, that's great. If that was their intention all along, great. But the bullying, like, why doesn't this have a solo mode? You should put in a solo mode, when that might distract them from further developing the main game, the multiplayer game. Yeah, if that's not the game they originally wanted to make, then I don't understand pushing that, pushing them to do that. But then that's usually the situation where a fan will figure out a solo mode. It seems like solo fans are going to find a way to play the game solo somehow. Adam says you talk about Pitch Car all the time. Can you answer the following questions on the podcast?
No.
Oh, rank or rate the Pitch Car expansions. Is it better to get an expansion or just another base set?
That's actually a good question, the second one. And I mean, even the expansions is fine. If you're going to get Pitch Car, I would get the base set first. I would consider very strongly getting 2 base sets. You can build a slightly bigger track. The base set's fine, but also getting 2 of the base sets gives you double the amount of cars that you can use when playing.
Yep.
When it comes to the expansions, my favorite expansion, go figure, is literally, it's a tie between the first expansion, I believe it's the first one, might be the second, I forget the one, but the one that comes with the jump. Because the jump is just silly fun. After the jump, surprisingly, the long straights. There are these long pieces which are the same as 4 regular straights. They work fantastic. And then after that, it's kind of, what do you want? Do you want the crossroads? Do you want the second level, which I don't use very often? Do you want the one with holes in the road and a mini jump? Or do you want the newest one, which is the loop? They're all lots of fun, but you don't need to use all of them. So when I want more Pitch Car, I'm like, I'll get another set. I don't know. I tend to like that.
So now that you've had some time playing with the loop, how do you like that? As is it working as well as it's supposed to work?
It doesn't work as well as it's supposed to work, but I think I like it best as not a loop. I like it best as a hill or connecting piece or maybe a weird curve. I found that in those situations, it works really well. And people tend to like that.
Okay.
Pete says, what would you prefer? Video game DLC, downloadable content, or board game expansions? I don't actually understand how you compare those, but okay. He says, video games can overwhelm you with different in-game systems, controller skills, or even remembering your save files. Then 3 months later, new content. With most board games, you'll just reread the old rules, throw in the expansion, then read the new rules, and bam, you're ready to go. I find it fascinating, though, as I find both equally exciting when I get either, even though I have to approach each one differently. I'm sure others may feel the opposite, but I'm interested in your opinions.
Interesting.
Well, Pete, I'll say right here, I'm the opposite. So I'm playing Skyrim, and I download a new expansion, and I'm like, I wonder what this expansion does. well, I guess I'll figure it out when it happens.
Yeah.
And I'll be walking down the road, and some guy runs up to me who's a vampire. I'm like, this must be expansion stuff. A board game, I'm like, okay, look at the first rule book. Now look at the second rule book.
Yeah.
Okay, what do I need to do? What's the changes? Should I just set up the normal game and then look at the expansion book? Or the expansion book tell me what to do? What do I do? I don't see how you think that it's easier than the video game.
Yeah, the video game expansion just sort of integrates itself into the game. I mean, I guess it depends on what the video game is. But yeah, I have been certainly in the situation where I have a new expansion that I want to play, but I can't figure out how to integrate it on the fly. When we're like, okay, let's play this game. It's like, I got an expansion in here. I really want to play it, but I'm not familiar enough with the base game to just fold in the expansion on the fly. I need to, read through both rule books, and maybe we don't have time for that, so let's just not do the expansion today. I think it's harder to integrate board game expansions than it is to do video game DLC.
And that's all our questions, folks. It's now time to go back to when computers were about to stop working. Here we go.
It's a Dice Tower Top 10.
The Dice Tower's Top 10 list is brought to you by The Op, also known as USA Opoly, at theop.games.
In the year 2000.
What's that from? I can't get it.
In the year 2000. It was a bit that Conan did as they were approaching the year 2000. Conan and Andy Richter did this.
Okay. Well, there you go. Alrighty, folks. Well, 2000 was 20 years ago. The hobby was just coming into full swing. And by the way, if you're wondering, this is the end of this particular series this year. We will not be doing 25 years ago, although we could, because 95 was a pretty big year.
Yep.
But the year 2000, Euro games were really starting to come to America. Hasbro had just bought Avalon Hill and was making games from them. GMT was making games. People were playing those. A few people from America were starting to slowly make their way over to Essen and tell people about the cool games they saw there.
Oh, yeah.
And Reiner Knizia decided to start a whole new genre. Not really, but did I cover everything?
This is the period that I was just getting into hobby gaming. I think I really started in about 2001, but these are the games that were on the market, that were new as I got into the hobby. So all of these are like my entry into hobby board games.
This is also the time frame where Eric started yelling a lot.
I don't know what you're talking about. It's been a while.
Alrighty. Well, let's get going. For some reason, I cannot figure out Eric's first entry here, so I need to know what it is.
Number 10.
We're going to kick things off with the Powerpuff Girls, Villains at Large.
Oh, that's why. My word. It's like, what does PPG stand for?
It's a card game where you're attempting to defeat various villains, and in order to do so, you have to take control of the three Powerpuff Girls by playing cards of their color. But if an opponent, say Blossom is in front of another player, and you want to take control of her, you can play a card. They can defend by trying to play a stronger card to keep Blossom in front of them, which prevents you from using Blossom, so you can't necessarily take control of the villains. It's a simple card game. It's really a kid's game, but it has enough of a twist and some nice tactics that it's worth a mention. Number 10, the Powerpuff Girls, Villains at Large.
Yes, good choice, Eric. My number 10, very similar, is Powerpuff Girls Go to Cusco.
No.
Or I'm just kidding. It's actually the game Java, which has just reprinted last year as Cusco. Java is the second in the Mask trilogy of games, the first being Tikal, the third being Mexica. Java, designed by Wolfgang Kramer, is a pretty heavy game, although it's not too complex. You have 10 action points in your turn. you will spend these points putting out different tiles on the board, and you're scoring consistently in this game based on how you can place these tiles. You can literally place the tiles all over the place, giving you thousands of options, meaning this is a game you should never play with someone who has analysis paralysis. But it is a pretty solid game. I like it a lot. I think I would, again, want to play with people who move quickly, but it's pretty neat. That's Java.
Number 9.
My number 9 is Princes of Florence, a game where you are. It's a series of auctions, really. You're buying jesters and buildings and features to go on your board. They're polyomino pieces that you can build on your board, and they have to be adjacent to various features and parks and lakes and stuff like that. And it's all about planning out all of your various actions. I think it's like 14 actions you're going to get in the game. In order to do the stuff that you want to do. And it's tricky, and it can be it can really rely on the group. If you have a group that starts overbidding things tremendously and bidding or getting things really cheaply, it can throw off the balance of the game, which is why it's where it is on the list and not farther along on the list for me. But it's still a classic and a nice challenge if you're into auctions. Princes of Florence, my number 9.
Yeah, I like the idea of this a lot. It played well, but I just think it's a game that hasn't aged well in 20 years. You got to give it a lot of props. A lot of people liked it. There's a lot of cool stuff going on, but I just don't think it's aged well. And also, if you mess up an auction, you could lose the whole game. Speaking of games that are mean, my number 9 is Babel. This 2-player game in the Cosmos line will make you want to throw the game into your opponent's face, probably. It's about building some ziggurats, and you're doing so by playing various cards, and some of the cards are steal stuff from your opponent. I mean, it's wham bam in the other person's face the whole game. There's even things like, I'll sit there and go, okay, I'm tired of always stealing my stuff. I'm just going to save up a bunch of cards, and then I'm going to nail them. And then they do something like, get rid of half the cards in your hand. Now, all this makes the game sound pretty awful, but once I got over my drubbing that I got in the first time I played this, I really did like it. It's a pretty good back and forth game. You just got to realize it's mean, and you're going to get as good as you give. But if you like this 2-player back and forth type game, Babel's pretty strong. That's my number 9.
Number 8.
My number 8 is Web of Power, a very fast-playing area control game. It's card driven. You have a hand of cards that have areas, different colors, different regions on the map that you will be able to play in. And by playing these cards, you can put your pieces into cities and on roads connecting to them. And the way the scoring works out is interesting in this. Like, whoever wins it earns points equal to the number of pieces in that zone. And then second place is going to get half of that, see, now I'm forgetting exactly how it works, but
it's basically used as different areas connected to other areas. So the connection matters, and then also the number of second place matters. It's really just a big mathematical puzzle.
It is.
It has nothing to do with history at all. In fact, they remade the game completely and called it China. And it was literally almost the same game. So that doesn't mean it's bad, but it means it is themeless.
Right. My point, I guess, is that it's just as important sometimes to be second place, and it can be almost as lucrative as being first place, depending on how the pieces have played out. But it also plays really, really fast. For having so many options and depth, Web of Power plays in about 30 minutes. It's pretty neat. My number 8, Web of Power.
My number 8 is a game that I'm surprised is not on Eric's list because it's so amazing, and that's Hera and Zeus. And the only reason it's lower for me is because they remade it as Thunder and Lightning, and it really was better that way. But Hera and Zeus is a 2-player card game version of Stratego to some degree, in which you are trying to find the old maid that your opponent has. I'm just kidding. Not the old maid, but you're trying to find a single card in your opponent's deck. You find that card, you win. And you have this card, and there are cards that let you pick a card out of your opponent's hand. You pick it out, you win. But if you put it on the board in front of you, then you move cards around and attack each other like Stratego, and if they attack this one, they win. So you have to try to figure out where you're going to put this card so your opponent can't get it. Really like this one a lot. It is a fantastic back and forth game designed by Richard Borg, same person who made Memoir 44. That's Hera and Zeus.
In the 20 years it's been out, I've never played this one. That's why it's not on the list.
You know what? At this point, if you haven't played a game from 2000, I don't even say anything anymore. Like, well, you should play this because you're not gonna.
Yep.
If you haven't played it in 20 years, I'd give up.
Number 7.
Speaking of a game, if you haven't played it in 20 years, you're probably not going to. My number 7 is Silberswerg, which is Silver Dwarves. This is
if they haven't made an English version of it by now, ain't gonna happen.
It's probably not gonna happen. This is a gem collection game. With orders that you're fulfilling as you mine and you collect these gems. And each turn that goes by where you don't fulfill an order, the cards rotate down, and it's worth less and less as time goes by. Not only do you have your own orders that you're dealing with, but there's also some group orders, public orders that you can fulfill. And sniping a lucrative public order from somebody else is pretty cool and very satisfying action to take. In Silver Dwarves, or Silberswerg, my number 7.
My number 7 is a small game from Blue Box Games called Castle. This is a game in which you are just trying to get rid of these discs. You get rid of these discs, you win. And when you play cards, you put a disc on that card showing that you control that card. But I might put a card next to it that sends that card back to your hand, therefore the disc goes back to you also. And all the cards affect each other, like there's cards outside the castle, and then you put catapults on the walls of the castle, and they'll force the cards on the outside to come in, but if I play cards outside first, they might force your cards to go in. It's a crazy, chaotic game with 6 players, but with 2 players, it's very thoughtful, and I actually like it both ways. This one needs to be redone at some point. It's a Bruno Faiduti game. I really enjoy a lot of the games from the Blue Box series, and this was one I had a lot of fun with. It's just called Castle. Boring name.
Number 6.
For number 6, The Lord of the Rings was not the first cooperative game to hit the hobby market, but it seems to be the landmark that people recognize as being one of the early big co-op games. It's a Reiner Knizia title that follows the plot of the books, Lord of the Rings, through multiple maps. It's a card management game as the hobbits work together. An expansion adds a Sauron player who can work against the hobbits, but the base game is just everyone working together and using their cards to work their way through various challenges and move the group along the path and use their special abilities and get through nasty events and hopefully not pull too many dark events from the bag while they're trying to advance the plot. It's not my favorite co-op game, and knowledge of the game certainly helps. If you really know the way the events are going to work out, alpha gaming can become a problem here. But it is a landmark in the cooperative sphere, and if you are a Lord of the Rings fan, a great adventure. Number 6, Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, this one has died down for me a lot since I played it, but you can't argue with just it's a really well-designed game. My number 6 is Aladdin's Dragons. This is one of the few Richard Breese games that got published by somebody else. Most of his games you'll know, Cathedral, Keyflower, things like that. In fact, Aladdin's Dragons was one of the key games. Mm-hmm. But they remade it with this really funky theme about a bunch of thieves raiding a bunch of dragons' caves at the same time, grabbing treasures from those, and then going and jumping into the palace to get the real treasures. And bribing the guard to get in. It's a really crazy game with some pretty cool components. It's a area control game where you have different people numbered from, I don't remember if it's 1 to 9, but it's, you have different values on them. Some of them you're placing face up, some you're placing face down. Oh, I think you place them all face down. Sorry, you place them all face down. So I know how many tokens you've put somewhere. I just don't know what the values on them are. And I find that to be really fascinating. It's a really fun game. Play it at a Dice Tower event because it's in the library. I like it that much. Actually, almost all these games are in the library on the one side of the players thing here.
Well, one of us is running the library.
Powerpuff Girls villains at large. Aladdin's Dragons. No, listen. I put Prince of Florence in the library, and I put Web of Power, I think, in the library. Lord of the Rings is in the library, and 2 more of Eric's games are in the library. So Maybe 3, if I can find one of them. My number 6, Aladdin's Dragons.
Number 5.
Number 5, I don't think is in the library. This is Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the one from 2000.
I might put it in if I got a copy of it.
Hasbro released this. I believe this is a Rob Daviau design. I need to double check that. But it is, if you're a fan of Clue, the board is going to look very similar. It's different buildings in Sunnydale, and it's character based. You've got one player playing whatever the big bad is. It's a plot of one of the first 4 seasons of the television show. And the other players are playing different characters. You can play Oz, you can play Buffy, you can play Willow, you can play Xander. And they have different strengths and weaknesses. Xander has lots of weaknesses. And they draw different types of cards that really make it feel like you're playing that character. Oz can transform into a werewolf at various points in the game. You got the vampires that run around and they can't be in the sunlight. And for being a mass market tie-in game, this one is solid and a good time. And it's great to take down one of the big nasty bad guys from the television show. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, number 5.
My number 5 is higher in Eric's list, like physically higher.
Number 4.
It's because you have to build a tower. My number 4 was Tom's number 5. That is Star Wars Queen's Gambit, a lovely system that brings to life the finale of Star Wars Episode 1. You've got this multi-level, 3-level tower where you're fighting all of the battle droids and working your way into a throne room. There's a Jedi battle going on in one part of the board. There's a big epic field battle going on with the Gungans and the droids and a starship battle as Anakin flies his little pew-pew gun ship trying to take down the shield generator. And trying to balance all 4 of those battlefronts is really cool. And focusing on one over the other and maybe making a push when it's going to be advantageous, which can get you a huge advantage in maybe another battlefield. This one is very, very difficult to get. It's been re-implemented into Star Wars Risk using very similar systems. It's not nearly as epic, but it uses a similar system. Still, Star Wars Queen's Gambit has wonderful table presence and it is a great adventure. It's a 2 or 4 player game. The 4-player game works, but it's not great. It's really a 2-player game.
Yeah, the 4-player game is just basically you're playing half of a 2-player game.
Right.
So I just consider it a 2-player game. But yeah, fantastic miniatures. It's a fun game all around. You get to chuck dice. You get to see the story play out. It's extremely entertaining, especially if you play with someone who gets in the spirit of the game. This is probably along the same lines of thought, honestly, as the Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I haven't played that myself, but they seem like they would hit the same groups of people, maybe. My number 4 is a game called Citadels.
Citadel!
And that's why. No, this is one of those games. I still remember the first time I played it. It blew my mind. I was like, this is amazing. We got to play it again. We got to play it again right now. In this game, you pick the role each round. Everyone picks a role, and then you take turns doing these roles, and things happen. I played it in Korean, with a bunch of Koreans. Didn't even know what people were saying half the time. And I loved it. I had so much fun with it. It was an easy one that I got for my collection, and I still think highly of it today. Easy choice for me. I am shocked it's not on Eric's list. My number 4, Citadels.
Yeah, I don't know. Something about it. I just didn't put it on the list.
Number 3.
My number 3 is Cartagena. This of all the ones on my list, I think this is the one that I've played most recently. Cartagena still is a family staple and one that comes out a lot. It is an escape from a prison. You're pirates. You have, I think, 6 of them that are trying to make their way through a winding path with various symbols on the path. And the way you move forward is by playing a card from your hand that has that symbol. You get to move to the next open version of that symbol. So if you're playing a pistol and a certain number of pistols in front of you are full, you get to move to the next open pistol, which can be very advantageous. But of course, the next player can then move even farther by playing a pistol card. So you have to do something to open up one of the pistol spaces so that it's not so easy to do that. The only way to draw cards is to move your pirates backwards. And the way that you push and pull and move forward and pull back and retreat and advance, doing that well is how you beat the other players in Cartagena. It's my number 3. Still gets played.
Cartagena is a pretty good game. It's one that I don't want to play all the time, but I definitely think if you've not played it, it's certainly one to check out, folks. My number 3 is higher on Eric's list, and that's because he stole my city.
And I loved every second of it.
Number 2.
Number 2 is La Chita. This is a game. It's a civilization game. You're building these what start out as ish. I mean, you have different civ elements. You've got stuff to focus on: cleanliness, health, military power. But every round of the game, you don't know what the emphasis is going to be. You don't know what is going to be scored. I think there's 4 scoring cards. One of them is face up, but the other 3 are face down. And you can spend actions to look at the face down cards, but that's doing stuff you're spending actions to do that when you're not doing other things. But if you're able to focus and grow your city in the direction that will be scored, you can draw villagers from other people, take their population. And of course, all the population you have to feed, you have to build next to farms and collect gold. And it's neat. It's cool to build a city that can, be more popular than your neighbor's city. La Chita, number 2.
It is interesting. This is one that's fallen for me over the years. I still like it, but it has some issues to it. It's very soulless for one. And it does play out very similarly each time. But yeah, it's cool. My number 2 is the amazing game Battle Lines. One of the best 2-player games ever made. From Reiner Knizia, where you're playing 3 cards at different spots, and you want to have a better 3 cards than your opponent. But you're playing only 1 card at a time, and you're also drawing from the same deck, and so you're trying to count the cards, figure out where all the cards are. Oh, it's so good. It's also called
Shot and Totten.
The name just Shot and Totten. Either one of those is fine. Battle Lines added a small little extra deck of cards, which you can play with or not, but the newest version of Shot and Totten has those added to it also, so go figure. They're both the same game. My number 2, Battle Lines.
Was the 2000 release, is that Shot and Totten, or was Battle Lines released in 2000? Or Battle Line?
I wonder now. I'll look that up while you go to your number 1, and I'll get back to you.
Okay.
And finally, number 1.
Number 1, as Tom hinted in his number 3 slot, is Carcassonne. This is the granddaddy of the tile laying and one of the games that got me into the hobby to begin with. This one, again, sees play and is still seeing play today. You're drawing tiles and placing them on the board, creating roads, building cities, putting your meeples down. This is, the introduction of the meeple. Putting them down on the board to claim those roads, claim farms as your own. There are tons of variants, tons of expansions to Carcassonne. But even just the base game offers a lot of interest and ease of entry into this hobby of ours. This is a great family game. Carcassonne, my number 1.
Carcassonne is a fantastic game. I know that it gets a lot of hate these days, or people, it's like, oh, that's a game I played back in the day. But when you teach new people, and you know what? I think Carcassonne could have a big resurgence right now because everyone is getting into jigsaw puzzles.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And you'd be like, it's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. And it really does appeal to people who like to see a jigsaw puzzle completed. Carcassonne appeals to that. And it's also fun. And it can be a little vicious as you fight for different areas on the board. But and I'll say this. It's spawned a bunch of spin-offs, and with the exception of A New World, which is horrible, the rest are fantastic and really cool ways to play the game. I really like it a lot. Recommend it. My number 1 is Trump Fabric, which came out here, or Dream Factory, or whatever you want to call it. There's so many versions of it. This game in which you are making movies. It's an auction game from Reiner Knizia. If you haven't noticed, was like king in the year 2000.
He was, yes.
And you are bidding to get different people in your movies, and then when you win the bid, you pay everybody else. So if you lose a lot of auctions, you're eventually going to have enough money to win. And then you just make movies, and you make funny combinations, but you're also trying to score points. It's a solid game with a fun theme added to it. I like it a lot. That's Trump Fabric.
It is a very nice game. This was probably my number 11. It's a very good, and that bidding system is cool. And it's a shame that the English editions, due to rights issues, were never able to make the version that Trump Fabric was, that actually used, real people. But I get it.
Yeah. Well, either way, real quick, I will say that Shottentotten did come out in 99.
Ah, okay. So Battle Line is the edition from 2000.
Yeah. All right, so People's Choice. Number 10, they agree with Eric and said Cartagena. Number 9, Dream Factory. They agreed with me. Number 8, Taj Mahal.
Taj Mahal.
I hate it.
Me too.
Hate it.
I don't like it.
I think Eric does too.
I don't like that game.
Taj Mahal is like a big Euro game that's essentially a giant game of chicken.
Yes, and an evil game of chicken. You lose the game of chicken, and you're just not happy.
Number 7 is Princess of Florence. Number 6 is Battle Line. Number 5 is Hive. Number 4 is Citadels. Number 3 is Lord of the Rings. Number 2 is Bloku, or Blockus, however you pronounce it. And number 1, Carcassonne. That's some pretty good stuff. Yeah, so that's it. We're done with the going back 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I like doing this every year because I like to see games that are still around, games that we can still talk about. And of these games, you can still get Carcassonne and Blocus pretty easily.
Yeah.
The rest of them are kind of tricky to find, frankly. I'm looking through the list here. Heron Zeus was reprinted as Thunder and Lightning. Citadels is still easy to find.
Yeah. There was a new
Battle
version
Lines was
just a couple years ago, so...
Battle Lines was done as Shot and Top, but some of these games, Star Wars Queen's Gambit, that's rare. I'm pretty sure Buffy the Vampire Slayer is rare.
It's rare.
Lord of the Rings, I sense there might be a reprint of that someday. I don't know. I'm just guessing. I don't know anything. And yeah, Babel was reprinted as Cusco.
Yep.
Not Cusco. It's a very different thing.
Cusco is different.
Yeah, so I don't know. We'll see. Well, we'll be back in 2 weeks. Next week, Mandy and Suzanne. And like I said, if you need more stuff, more to watch or listen to, check out the Dice Tower channel. Anyway, until next time, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Eric Summerer.
And you've been listening to the Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This episode, number 655, was recorded on April 16th, 2020. Mandy and Suzanne join you next week, and in 2 weeks, it's our top 10 games starting with O. This podcast is sponsored by listeners like you. Thank you for your continued support. And speaking of support, the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund is dedicated to providing support to members of the board gaming community in their hour of need. If a catastrophic event has become more than you can handle, find out how we can help at jackvassell.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Mandy, Suzanne, and Eric, with assistance from Rob Searing, Mike Delisio, and Roy Kennedy. Milk and Ice Cream Blended Drinks by The Docks, brought to you by Shakespeare. Timothy Pinkham composed our theme, and you can get the latest on everything Dice Tower at Dicetower.com. Let us know what you think of the show by posting to the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, following the Dice Tower on Twitter, or by emailing us at tom@Dicetower.com or eric@Dicetower.com. And don't forget to visit the other shows in the Dice Tower Network, including Board with Video Games, Meeple Overboard, Solosaurus, Flip Flory Super Saturday Board Game Serial, Every Night is Game Night, Our Turn, Board Game Blitz, and Dice Tower Tonight. Find your next favorite at Dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming.
Humperdinck.
Humpadink.
Or, in our case, Citadels. Citadels.
It's been a while since I yelled Citadels. Feels good.
It is.
Feels good.
Did it feel good? You got it out?
Yeah, I feel like I've got my once yearly yell to let some stuff out. It's important.
Got it.